a low chair. I'm in my office. It's coming along. I'm gradually getting here. But anyway, I want to go over our lesson for this week. And this video is going to be on lesson 11. And this is on the law of supply and demand. And this is by far one of the most important lessons for you to understand. And so we're going to get right at the task of understanding the law of supply and demand. I'm looking at the book here. The book has 3 objectives, so there's my 3 objectives for you because I'm following closely to the book this year. But you need to understand the definitions of supply and demand. You need to understand what the law of supply and demand are. And then we need to understand this thing that we call equilibrium. That is how we get to pricing. So first let me go over some definitions for you. To have supply and to have demand, all right? To have supply means you must have the desire to supply something, and you must have the ability. When you talk about supply, we're not talking about people who are consumers. We're talking about people who are producers, all right? People who produce things to sell, all right? Business owners. When you think of the law of supply, think of businesses that start and they want to supply something for people, all right? So, but to have supply, you must have a willingness to supply and you must have the ability to supply, or you don't have legitimate supply. All right? The law of supply says that as prices go up, supply increases. What that means is when people see, when one person sees another person selling something and making good money at it, that's what we mean by prices increase, okay, are high, then other people will want to get into that market and also sell because there's money to be made. That's what we mean by when prices increase, supply, quantity supplied increases. All right? That's what that means. Now, let's talk about the law of demand. The law of demand, first of all, demand is now on the consumer side. Consumers are demanding products. They want products to buy. So, demand, to have legitimate demand, you must have the ability, you must have the desire to buy something, and you must have the ability to buy something. That's what we call demand. Now, the law of demand is as prices go down, and I'm going to show you this on a chart here in just a minute, as prices go down, the quantity demanded increases. So what that means is you and I probably are alike in that we want good deals. And so usually people, when they see a price go down, they buy more of. For example, today my wife and I were shopping at Meijer, and we went by the Meijer gas station out in front of the store, and gas was $2.17 a gallon. And it hasn't been that low in some time. I mean, just earlier this week it was $2.60 or $2.70 a gallon. And I put a lot of miles on my vehicle. I drive a lot. So $2.17 is good. And I said to my wife, we need to stop. We should swing in there right now. But she wanted to go grocery shopping, and she was sure that the price wasn't going to change. Well, when we came out, it had gone up 7 cents. It was $2.24. Still a good price. And so I got as much gas as I could at $2.24, knowing that I have a commute to the Potter's house and I referee and all that. So what I'm saying is that when you see a good price, when prices go down, you buy more of. That's the quantity demanded. All right? So those are some of the definitions in the book. And what we're going to do is there's another thing called, let's take a look here. There's what we call a demand schedule, and there's also something called a supply schedule. A demand schedule, and that's found on page 148 and 149 in your book. A demand schedule just simply puts down in a chart format how much someone is willing to pay for a certain quantity. All right? So let's just kind of move the camera over here. And here is a chart. Jennifer's going to buy gas. And looks like I need to adjust this just a bit. Let me move that over a little bit more. There we go. So this is right out of your book. There is the price that she's willing to pay per gallon and the quantity at that price. All right? So at $5 a gallon, she's not willing to buy anything. No gas at $5 a gallon. At $4 a gallon, nothing. At $3.50 a gallon, she'll buy 1.5 gallons. At $3 a gallon, she'll buy 2.5 gallons. At $2.50 a gallon, she'll buy 4 gallons. Do you see that? Okay. At $2 a gallon, she's willing to buy 8 gallons. See, when we get that price go down, we buy more. At $1.50 a gallon, she's willing to buy 10.7 gallons. At $1 a gallon, she's willing to buy 14.7 gallons. Don't ask me why the 0.7, okay? It's just what the book put on there. And at 50 cents a gallon, she's willing to buy 14.7. I'd buy even more than that. But anyway, that's what Jennifer. Now, this is called a demand schedule. And so what you next need to do is you need to put this in a demand chart or a graph, and it looks like this. This is called an axis. We come down, we have an axis, and we go out this way. So in economics, we often put price or dollars, price or dollar, on the left, and we put the quantity on the bottom. All right? So now, what you do is you take your demand schedule and you copy the numbers over. Let's copy the prices over. We have $5, we have $4, we have $3.50, we have $3, we have $2.50, we have $2, I'm going to run out of room here. We have $1.50, we have $1, we have 50 cents. I kind of jammed them up together, but you get the idea. Okay? Now let's do the quantity. There's 0 quantity, there's 0 quantity, there's 1.5, there's 2.5. See, I'm just copying numbers over. There's 4, there's 8, there's 10.7. I need to extend this out a little bit. There's 14.7, 14.7. So now what we've done is we've taken numbers from a demand schedule and we've put it into a graph chart that looks like this. And now what you do is you plot your line. I'll show you what I mean by that. So we got to put little points, plot markers on this to see what the line looks like for demand. So again, at $5 a gallon, she's not going to buy, she's buying 0. So I find the 0 and I find the 5 and I put a little dot. Okay? Whoops. Okay? $4 a gallon was 0. I find my 0 here, I go up here and across from the 4 and I put a little dot. And then at $3.50, 1.5. At 1.5 gallons, she's buying $3.50. I move up here across the $3.50 line. Where's 1.5? Now watch. I'm just going to talk and you follow along. 2.5 gallons, she said $3. So here's my 2.5. There's my $3 mark. $4 or 4 gallons was $2.50. That looks like it's right about here. 8 gallons at $2 a gallon. 10.7 was $1.50 a gallon. 14.7 was $1 a gallon, and 50 cents a gallon here. All right. Now you draw your line. Demand. And there is demand. Okay. That's what a demand curve looks like. All right. So take a look at that. It's in your book. That's what your book is talking about. So now, let me talk about, I'm going to jump ahead of the book. Sometimes demand will shift. Sometimes this line, this curve might shift to the left or to the right. And what I mean by that is sometimes things happen in our life. And so remember, the law of demand says as prices drop, quantity supplied increases. All right? But let's just look at some different life events. Let's just say, for example, you lose your job and you don't have any income, or you take a cut in pay and you don't have as much money coming in. That means that your demand line, you're not going to be able to buy as much. All right? So what happens is your demand curve shifts like this to the left. And when your demand curve shifts to the left, what happens here is, take a look here. Before, I was willing 5, 4, 3.53. Before, I was willing to buy 2.5 gallons at $3. But my pay got cut. I lost my job. I don't have as much money. I don't have as much resource. So now I'm not going to buy so my demand has shifted, meaning I'm not going to buy because my income is less. Now look what happens. Demand for $3, I was going to get 2.5 gallons, but now at $3, it looks like I'm not going to buy much gas at all. Just a little, maybe a gallon. Okay? Demand has shifted to the left because of a life event, because I don't have as much money for whatever reason. Okay? That's one reason why demand will shift to the left. Okay? And that's what we're talking about when we say demand shifts to the left. Now, sometimes the demand will shift to the right. And when demand shifts to the right, usually what happens is I get a tax return, I get more resource somehow, okay? Somebody gives me more money, I get a pay increase, I get a better job, I get a tax return, tax return of a credit that comes back to me, and I get money back on my return. Okay, I got more money. So what happens is when I have more resources, more money, then demand shifts to the right, and what that means is I'm willing to buy more. And so let's take a look at this. So if demand shifts to the right, let's go back to that $3 a gallon. $3 a gallon right here, roughly. I'm right here. Before, I was going to buy 2.5 gallons. When I lost my job, I was hardly going to buy any gasoline at all. But now look, at $3 a gallon, demand has shifted to the right. My curve goes like this. Here's my $3, and look, I'm going to buy a little over 8 gallons of gas because I got a pay increase. All right? That's what that means by demand shifting to the right. Now, let me talk about supply. Supply works in a similar way. All right? Supply works in a similar way. Again, to be a supplier, to supply goods and services, you must have desire, and you must have the ability. And the law of supply says, as price increases, the quantity supplied increases. So that means as you make more money, that means as you see other people, as one business person, as a potential business person sees another business person making money in a certain area, a certain market, you want to get into that market too, and you want to sell. And your book, let me just bring it over here, gives an example. They should give an example of that. That's found on page 153, okay? Again, you have a market supply. You have on page 153, you have different people willing to supply at different prices. And it works the same way, okay? Supply, I'm not going to redo the chart, but it works the same way. You have a supply schedule, just like you have a demand schedule. That's on page 153. And for supply, you're going to plot out supply the similar way. Price on dollars or price on this way, quantity supplied here. But supply is upward to the right instead of downward to the right, okay? Because as price increases, quantity supplied increases, all right? And so I'm not going to plot through, but you do the same thing. You take your data, you fill it in, and you plot your points so you can come up with your supply line, okay? That's what that's all about there. Now, let me talk about two more things here. And that is kind of like the main thrust of this. Let me erase this for a second. All right? So now I've given you detail on the law of demand. I've given you the big idea on the law of supply, and it works similar as far as how to plot things. All right? Now, what this is all getting at is pricing. And the economic term in the law of supply and demand for pricing is equilibrium. And equilibrium is that point on a graph where supply and demand come together. Well, take a look at it. So here you have your graph, and here you have price or dollar. Here you have your quantity, whether it's demanded or supplied. And you have a demand line that typically goes down and to the right. As prices go down, quantity supplied increases. You have a supply line that typically goes up and to the right. As prices increase, quantity supplied increases. All right? So now, where these two come together, in other words, I'm willing to supply, and I would love to sell at these higher prices. And you want to buy, but you'd rather buy at lower prices. So at a certain point, when we come together, where these two meet, X marks the spot, this is called equilibrium. Equilibrium, or price. And this is where a consumer and a producer come together and they find a price that they agree to. And so that's what this is. Now, so that's equilibrium. That's when we find price. Now listen to this. Anything below equilibrium down here is called shortage. And what shortage is, what happens is, if you supply this much, if you supply, you're not willing to supply at lower prices. You're willing to supply at higher prices. So if your supply is right here, whatever this is, let's say it's $10, and the demand is over here. People at low prices, people want more. This might be 5, and this might be 20 of whatever it is we're selling. All right. So people want to buy more, but I'm willing to only supply. So when demand is bigger than supply, you got more people coming together for the few things that you've got, you're short. You're out. You'll find this when you're doing your businesses this week. You might come to market Tuesday with 20 smoothies, and you might only sell 10. Okay? You supplied. Let me rephrase that. You might come with 10 smoothies, and you had no idea that everybody at Potter's House likes smoothies. You come with 10 smoothies, but they want 20. You're short. That's what this is called. Okay, you see? This is the supply line. This is the demand line. And this is where we come together for price. And anything below that, this is called shortage. It's called shortage, okay? You came with 5 smoothies, but 20 Potter's House kids wanted smoothies. 20 minus 5 is 15. You're short 15. That's shortage, okay? On the other hand, maybe you'll be overly optimistic, and you'll come Tuesday and you'll want to sell 20 smoothies, okay? So you've supplied them here, 20 smoothies, but I don't know, maybe it'll be rainy, cold, and drizzly, and people won't feel like smoothies. And people will only want to buy 10. You've brought 20. They only want 10. What does that mean? It means you got ice cream melting. It means you got more smoothies left over. You got a surplus. So below here is called shortage. Anything above equilibrium is called surplus. And that's when you bring to market a lot, but the demand is little, and so you've got leftover stuff, and so that's called a surplus. And we know usually with a surplus, if it's like a smoothie, if it's a perishable item, you're going to be selling those things at reduced prices. But this is the big picture of the chapter. The law of supply, the law of demand, knowing what equilibrium is, understanding shortage, and understanding surplus. Oh, and you know what? And there again, and remember, demand will shift to the left, meaning if you have less resource, then you're not going to buy as much, okay? On the other hand, if demand shifts to the right, that means you get more resource, then you're willing to buy more at that price, all right? Supply works the same way. I didn't really cover that. But a supply line, let me just show you. A supply line, price, quantity, supply. If that's my supply line, if I'm impacted by something, all right? I'm selling smoothies, but people don't want to buy smoothies in the market. They want to buy something else. So I'm not going to bring as many smoothies the next time, okay? Or let's just say Mr. Abbott or Mr. Clark put a high tax on smoothies, all right? And it's going to make it more costly for me to supply smoothies. My supply is going to shift to the left like this. That's an arrow. Bad arrow. My supply is going to shift to the left, and I'm not going to supply as many smoothies, okay, at that price. On the other hand, if my resource is greater and my supply line shifts to the right, a greater resource means that Mr. Clark and Mr. Abbott have decided, instead of taxing me, they're going to give me, I'm having a senior moment. I'm trying to think of the term. It'll come to me later on. It's when the government gives, like, farmers some aid. And so if I get some aid from Mr. Clark or Mr. Abbott, they're going to give me some more money or whatever. They're going to make it possible that I can actually produce more smoothies for less price, for less price. Then what happens is I'm going to supply more smoothies, and my supply shifts to the right. So that's how supply shifts to the left, to the right. And then, of course, the big picture here is when the supply line and the demand line come together, that's called equilibrium or called price. Anything below that, if demand is more than what I've supplied, that's called shortage. And if I supply more than what is demanded, that's called surplus, called leftover. So that's the big picture. I hope that helps you, and I'll do a separate video for our next lesson, but this is lesson 11. We'll probably spend Monday and Tuesday on it. We'll probably spend 2 days on it before we go to the next set of material, okay? We might even spend a third day on it because it's so critical for you to get this. I hope you do really well. I hope your businesses go well, and I hope you have a really fun week with this. And if you're 7th hour, then hopefully have a fun next week, all right? That's all I've got for you for right now.